Hi guys, so I just want to talk about my paper for communication, my initial view. I pretty much just started out by defining communication as a verb that is involved in the act of interacting with one another in society. Common definition of the word communication is pretty much of like thoughts and ideas, information and emotions. I believe that one of the most interesting facts about communication is that all the different forms it can be used in, such as communication beads, such as sounds for speech or movements, to convey different forms of information or to influence others. For example, like it's not necessary to always use words to communicate to one another. You can always use body language or sounds, or moreover, there are many things that can be communicate between people, or even as we discussed in class, that even not communicating is still communicating. What's cool about communication is that it's very flexible. It can be used for many different reasons. People communicate to speak with one another, thus they be as simple as communicating with a friend about how their day is going, or on the other hand, communication can be used in numerous ways, such as ways to influence each other. Something I found that's really interesting about communication is all the aspects about communication and how versatile it is, how one specific language is not even necessary to communicate with one another. By using speech or any language or like sign language or something, movements, looks, sounds, almost any other interaction between one another is an act of communication. But it's actually, there are different levels of communication. So to communicate with someone, you might have different, like a different level of communicating than someone else would. So sometimes it's actually better to understand if you're on the same level as someone else, because some people are better at it than others. Not saying that some people are bad, but some are more advanced in it. And it's kind of a give or take action that requires listening and observing skills. You want to actively participate in the communication and responding. So to be considered one who communicates well would be someone who is actually like an active listener and who answers back and who actually has well thought out responses to what has been asked. And the example of this could be, two people trying to communicate over a fight. Both parties need to let the other speak, listen, and try to empathize and understand what the other is going through, and then to think about an appropriate response back, and then that would be an effective way to communicate with one another. A main issue with communication is since it's so commonly used, it's easy to take advantage of it and for other people to not realize that they're not effectively communicating. It's even a common mistake that when, let's say, like for example, when someone's trying to, when people have hard times remembering names when they meet someone, it's because, I do it too. Like when I'm so focused on on getting ready to say my name, I hear them say their name, but I don't actually hear it. So that's actually a good example of not communicating well, that you're so focused on what you're actually going to say, you don't actually hear what someone else is saying to you. And then the communication is almost lost when you're doing that. It's easy to go back to, but just that process is hard. In other words, what I'm getting at is that it takes both parties to actively participate in communication. So you need to actively listen to what someone is saying, to process what they're saying, and then to respond to what they're saying, and then to add your own information into it to successfully communicate with someone else. Pretty much what I'm getting at is communication it really is really versatile. You can use it for whatever. You can, it's very flexible. You can communicate by speaking, by sounds, by movements. You can even communicate by not trying to communicate. That is still trying to say something, which is honestly a really cool aspect of it. Honestly, in conclusion, communication is the best way to get your ideas across to someone else, to have someone or something or anything understand your feelings, or to help inform someone of what you're trying to say. It's honestly the best tool that helps people interact with one another, and it helps society continue by, learning from one another to communicate with each other. Communication is definitely a tool and a practice that should be practiced and used every day throughout the day. Although, it's easy for it to come naturally, it's easy to be overlooked, it is still something that should be practiced. Is something that should be acknowledged, and honestly that not everyone is communicating well, and that we can always improve our communication skills, and to understand that not everyone is on the same level. So maybe it'll help if maybe you don't think you're effectively communicating with someone, to probably go 60 when they're coming 40. Don't try and meet them halfway, but if you don't think that they're gonna cope to halfway, try to help out for that. If you have better communication skills, try to listen better, try to actively engage in a conversation better, or any form of communicating, try to improve yours. It should also be understood that you can control how you communicate, so try to communicate objectively, like I was saying. Pretty much overall, like, if you learn how to communicate well, then you have the ability to better understand others around you. Yeah, pretty much speaks for itself. What I'm saying is, like, you want people to understand where you're coming from, so to do that, you need to effectively communicate with people, to get your ideas across, to get your feelings across, your emotions, what you're trying to get at. You want people to understand, and to do that, you need to effectively communicate with others so they understand, because if you don't, then there is a lack of communication going on, and lack of understanding. Thus, by doing so, it's helping you play your role in society and interacting with others. So overall, this is my initial view, and also it's a little expanded because of what I've learned in class. I have always, I've known what communication is, and I've participated probably every day of my life. So this is still very broad. It's not really focused as much, but I have learned more. Even, something that, like how I've known it, but even never really thought about that. Even not communicating is still communicating, that, by you not saying something is still saying something. Honestly, that's probably one of the most interesting facts that I've actually known. I just haven't, really focused on. But yeah, that is pretty much my initial view of communication. Again, that, it takes two to communicate. It always takes both parties, so best ways to effectively communicate is to listen and to understand and to comprehend what is going on, and to respond objectively and answer what is going on. That is my initial view of communication, and that is what my paper was on. And